So, what does it really take to build a fortress in the digital age? I'm talking about one strong enough to protect the data of, well, billions of people. Today, we're going to peek behind the curtain at Google's massive security operation. We'll see exactly how they defend their services and, more importantly, your information. So let's just dive right in.
Okay. So first, to really get a handle on the challenge here, you have to understand the sheer scale we're talking about. Get this, Google has 9 different services, and each one has over 1 billion users. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That's 9 completely separate platforms, search, Gmail, Maps, YouTube, the whole lot, all operating at this just mind-boggling size. And you better believe every single one of them is a massive target. Right, so that leads us to the big question. Really, the whole point of this explainer. How on earth do you even begin to build a fortress that's strong enough to protect all that data for all those people, especially when the threats are changing, like every single day? It's definitely not about just having one big lock on the front door. Nope, it's all about layers. And that core philosophy has a name. It's called defense in depth. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. You don't rely on one single thing to keep you safe. Instead, you build all these different independent layers of security. Think of it like a castle with a moat, then a high wall, then guards, then another wall. So if an attacker somehow gets past one layer, boom, there's another one waiting, and another one after that. All right, so let's start peeling back these layers one by one. We're going to start with the actual physical fortress. Then we'll look at how data is protected when it's on the move. After that, we'll crack open the digital vault itself. And finally, we'll look at the human defenses in place. Sound good? Let's go. Okay, first up, the physical fortress. This is the layer you can actually, touch. It's all about securing the hardware and the buildings themselves. Because it makes sense, right? Before you can even think about digital security, you gotta lock things down in the real world. And this is where Google's control is just absolute. They don't just go out and buy computer parts. No way. They design everything themselves. We're talking server boards, networking gear, even their very own custom security chips. And why do they do that? Well, it means they know exactly what's inside so they can get rid of any hidden weak spots. Then there's something called a secure boot stack. Basically, it uses fancy digital signatures to make 100% sure that every single machine is loading the exact correct software it's supposed to, nothing else. And all this gear, it's locked away in these custom-built data centers with security so intense that only a tiny, tiny fraction of Google employees are ever allowed to set foot inside. All right, so the hardware is locked down tight, but your data isn't just sitting in one place. It's constantly on the move. So this next layer is all about protecting that data while it's in motion, zipping between their data centers or flying from their servers straight to your device. So Google handles this in 2 different ways. First, for all the data that's moving around inside their own network, between their own services, they use something called remote procedure calls, or RPCs. The easiest way to think about these is like heavily armored, secure tunnels. Any data going through these tunnels between data centers gets encrypted automatically. Now, for traffic coming from the outside world, that's you connecting to Gmail or YouTube, it first has to get past this massive digital shield called the Google front end. The GFE, as they call it, makes sure your connection is always encrypted, and it's basically the first wall that any outside attack is going to hit. And this is where Google's incredible size really becomes a security superpower. You've probably heard of denial of service attacks, right? That's when attackers just try to flood a service with so much junk traffic that it crashes. A normal website or server, it would be toast in seconds. But Google's network is so unbelievably massive, it can just absorb these attacks. It's literally like a tidal wave crashing against an entire continent. When you add their other specific defenses on top of that raw scale, well, trying to knock a Google service offline is pretty much a fool's errand. Okay, we've covered the buildings and we've covered the networks. Now it's time to go even deeper. Let's look inside the digital vault. This is where your account gets verified and where your data is actually kept. Protecting your account these days is about way, way more than just a password. When you try to log in, Google's system is doing this really smart, risk-based analysis in the background. It's asking questions like, hey, is this a new phone? Or is this person logging in from a country they've never been to before? If anything seems even a little bit off, it's going to challenge you to prove it's really you. And for the absolute best security you can get, there's the physical U2F security key. It's exactly what it sounds like, a physical key for your digital life. A hacker could have your password, but if they don't have that little key in their hand, they're not getting in, period. Okay, so you're logged in. But what about all the stuff you've stored? Your emails, your photos, all those documents. Well, all of that is protected by what's called encryption at rest. It's a simple concept.
Your data isn't just sitting on a hard drive for anyone to read. Instead, it's completely scrambled up using super strong encryption. The only way to unscramble it is with a special key, and those keys are managed incredibly carefully. This protection is baked right into the hardware on every single hard drive and SSD.
So we've talked about hardware, we've talked about networks, we've talked about data, but you know what? Any security system, no matter how advanced, is only as strong as the people behind it. And that brings us to our final and maybe the most important layer of all, the human defenses. Google's approach here has a bunch of different parts. For one, they use smart machines to constantly hunt for threats. But they also have their own team of experts, a red team, whose whole job is to try and break their own systems. They're basically professional in-house hackers. Then on the inside, access to any user data is super restricted and constantly monitored to prevent any insider threats. Oh, and every single employee has to use one of those physical security keys we talked about. And finally, not one single line of code can be added to a Google product until a second engineer has reviewed it for problems. It's a pretty tight ship. But here's the cool part. They don't just rely on their own people. They have something called the Vulnerability Rewards Program, which basically means Google will literally pay anyone in the world, any security researcher who can find a bug in their systems and report it. It's brilliant, really. It's like having a global army of allies all helping you find the cracks in your fortress. Okay, so we've walked through the physical fortress, the protection for data in motion, the digital vaults, and the human defenses. Now, let's just step back for a second and put it all together to see the big picture. And here it is, defense in depth, all in one place. You've got the physical fortress, securing the actual hardware. Then you've got the protections for data in motion. Inward from that is the digital vault, locking down your identity and your stored files. And then surrounding everything are the human defenses, the people and the rules that keep everything secure. You know, each layer on its own is pretty strong, but the real power, the real secret, is how they all work together. And really, that's the key takeaway here. There is no single magic bullet for security. It's the way all of these different layers are woven together, from the actual concrete and steel of the data centers, all the way up to the security-first culture of the engineering teams. That integration is what creates a system strong enough to handle the kind of scale Google deals with every day. But here's the thing. Security is never, ever done. The bad guys are always getting smarter, always innovating. So it leaves you with a pretty big question, right? As we see these new threats emerging, from AI, from quantum computing, from things we haven't even thought of yet, what's the next layer of the fortress going to look like?